Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to my channel. A few days ago, I received a very fun message over Messenger on Facebook. A lovely person named Faye, hello Faye, sent me a rather lovely message which at first was a bit of an ego boost, telling me how amazing I am and how much she loved my content, but then she asked me a very specific question. Hello Mara, my name is Faye and I absolutely love your content. Your YouTube videos have been a great help to me and I absolutely adore your high-energy TikTok videos too. Oh, well, hush you. I'm currently studying Druidry and I've become really fascinated by the concept of Nwyfre. Oh, okay. Nwyfre has been presented to us as the Welsh equivalent of chi or ki. How do you pronounce that? Ki? Ki? Kai? How do you pronounce that?
Chi.
Oh, it's just chi. Oops. Nwyfre has been presented to me as the Welsh equivalent of chi or prana. Okay. If you have the time, could you possibly make a video about it or a post about this topic, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as a Welsh person and as a Welsh witch. Well, Faye, I'd be honoured to. To be honest, this is not the first time I've been asked about Nwyfre. This is not the first time somebody has come to me and asked, well, how does Nwyfre fit into your practice as a Welsh witch and a Celtic polytheist? And just like in Faye's message, people usually come to me explaining that Nwyfre is the Welsh equivalent of chi or prana, these Eastern concepts. But is that really what Nwyfre is? Is that really what Nwyfre means in the Welsh language? Today we will be exploring Nwyfre. What does the word mean? How has it become such a magical concept in modern Druidry? And do we even have a concept in the Welsh language and in Welsh culture of this force that connects us to the land, to our ancestors, our creativity, our divinity and energetic current? Keep watching to find out. Hello and welcome to my channel. To those of you new here, my name is mhara.starling. I'm a Welsh woman who grew up on the Isle of Anglesey. I'm a native Welsh speaker and I'm also an author that writes about Welsh witchcraft as well as being a practicing Welsh folk witch and Celtic polytheist. As we said in the introduction, today we're going to be talking about Nwyfre. So first and foremost, that word, Nwyfre, how do you pronounce it? Well, that's how you pronounce it, just as I just said it. Nwyfre is pronounced Nwyfre. Nwyfre. Some people might stumble a bit on the W and the Y following each other. It's easier to cut it up into two words, so nwy, nwy, vre, vre, Nwyfre. So now that we've gotten the pronunciation over with, what is Nwyfre? According to the GPC, the Geiriadur Prifysgol Cymru, the University of Wales Dictionary, the word Nwyfre translates to mean sky, firmament, air, atmosphere, and also formerly in physics was the word used to describe the ether. As a native Welsh speaker, I understand Nwyfre to mean sky or atmosphere, and before entering into the realms of Celtic paganism and just paganism in general, I had never heard the word be used in any other context other than as sky or atmosphere. Of course, not that it's a word that comes up much in Welsh. It's not really a word that we would use in day-to-day conversation. It's a word that we would only really come across when studying medieval Welsh poetry or old Welsh books. Nowadays, if we say sky, we just say awyr. My first experience of hearing the word Nwyfre used in the context of anything other than sky or atmosphere was when I read a 2006 book called What Do Druids Believe by an author named Philip Cargom, which I'm sure if you're interested in Druidry and in Celtic paganism in general, you've probably heard of Philip Cargom. Now, in What Do Druids Believe, Philip Cargom describes Nwyfre as the life force that flows through the universe and which is called chi in China and prana in India. That's on page 55 of What Do Druids Believe. Now, according to this definition of Nwyfre, Cargom states that the druid would tap into Nwyfre alongside Awen, the force of divine inspiration, to improve their physical vitality and their creative ability. So it's definitely a concept found in modern paganism. I also heard the term a few years later when I was at a moot, and this is when it finally caught in my mind and I was like, I need to know more about this. During the moot, a druid explained that Nwyfre was the Welsh equivalent of chi, and that it was this creative force that flows through us. The moment I heard those words being spoken, I decided, okay, I'm Welsh, I need to know more about this. And so off I went on a little exploration of my own to find out what exactly is Nwyfre. And this is what I found in my explorations. The word Nwyfre itself exists within the Welsh language all the way back to the 14th century at least. It's probably much older than that, but we have a written record of it being used in the Welsh language in the 14th century, in manuscripts where it's recorded in old poetry. The word Nwyfre was used in the poetry of Llywarch ap Llywelyn, a notable medieval Welsh poet who often went by the name of Prydydd y Moch, the poet of the pigs. And again, in medieval Welsh poetry and in Old Welsh writing, when the word Nwyfre is used, it's quite a dramatic word that once again means sky or atmosphere. As we go into the 19th century and a little bit prior to that, we start seeing the word being used to describe the ethereal sphere in physics, as well as the firmament or the atmosphere once more. And this is still in keeping with Nwyfre being defined as meaning sky or atmosphere. And this is all very interesting, that this word has a long history in the Welsh language, both in poetry and in physics. But where does the concept of Nwyfre being this vital life force that the Druids would tap into come from? Well, as with all things that are druidic in nature, we can attest the evolution of Nwyfre being used to describe this vital life force and being compared to concepts such as chi, probably to Iolo Morgannwg. Iolo Morgannwg, of course, is an icon in the revival of modern-day Druidry. Whether you see him as an influential prophetic bard or a complete fake, a charlatan who forged fake manuscripts. Either way, you have to admit that his influence is infamous on Druidry, as it is today. His influence on the very culture, or occulture, as Christopher Hughes would say, of modern Druidry is unquestionable, no matter what you might think of him personally. If you don't know who Iolo Morgannwg is, I very much recommend looking him up. He's a very interesting figure to look into, and a lot of the things that he did influenced a lot of modern Druidry, which in turn influenced Celtic paganism as a whole. I'm pretty sure Celtic source Gwilym Morris has done a video on Iolo Morgannwg. If I'm correct in that, I will link it down below, because he would be able to present who Iolo Morgannwg is to you in a much better way than I ever could. In Bardas, one of the most influential books when it comes to the revival of the bardic tradition and modern-day Druidry, Morgannwg refers to Nwyfre as God, from whom proceeds every life, strength and intellect, and every perception and sense. So here we start to see that familiar idea of Nwyfre being presented as this life force, this connecting energy. This is likely the origin of Nwyfre being seen in that way, because we don't see it anywhere else historically before this point. This interpretation of Nwyfre as this life force and empowering energetic current was in turn adopted by modern pagan druid orders and revivalist movements, and has now become a staple of numerous druidic order teachings and neo-pagan movements. You will find this definition of Nwyfre as this connecting life force in a lot of books to do with Druidry or Celtic paganism. In fact, I've seen it prop up even a few times in just books that are just pagan in general. And almost always when it's brought up, it's referred to as the Welsh equivalent to chi or prana, correlating it with concepts that can be found in Eastern traditions, Eastern spiritual traditions. And this correlation with Eastern concepts likely stemmed from the obsession in the mid to late 20th century people had with Eastern spiritual philosophies in general, and trying to find a more native to them alternative that they could incorporate into their spirituality, trying to find a native alternative of something that was quite popular at the time, and it's just stuck. It's stuck. So let's get into talking about whether or not viewing Nwyfre as this connecting life force is problematic in any way. If it doesn't really have that much basis in Welsh history beyond the writings of Iolo Morgannwg, does it really make sense to incorporate it into our spiritual traditions today? So my answer to whether or not it's offensive to use Nwyfre in this way is, it's complicated. At least that's the way I see it. I don't necessarily see altering Nwyfre to define a spiritual or energetic force as problematic or offensive. And trust me, it's not just non-Welsh people who define Nwyfre in this way. I've heard numerous Welsh pagans even utilise Nwyfre in this fashion. So no, in my personal opinion, if you want to see Nwyfre as this energetic force, go for it. It's not offensive in my eyes as a Welsh person. But, and this is a big but, I do think it's important to know where everything comes from and to familiarise oneself with the history of the terms and concepts we follow in modern day paganism and witchcraft and just spirituality in general. I do believe that as pagans and witches, we should be asking why a lot more often than we do. Why do we believe this? Where does that come from? What proof do we have that that's what it means? These are questions I think we should be asking ourselves when we're talking about our beliefs. And I'm not saying that we should do that we should question these beliefs in order to discredit or to pummel them into non-existence. But instead, we should be asking why in order to familiarise ourselves with them and to make them more profound within our practice. Personally, I don't understand the idea of following something and believing in something without knowing the ins and outs of it, without first and foremost investigating where does it come from, what does it mean, what's the history of it. And so I think it's important to at least keep in mind what these words, these phrases, these concepts mean within the context of history, within the context of lore, within the context of language. What do they mean, and who decided that this is what it means, and where does that come from? As we've seen with Nwyfre, now if you've been paying attention, is that Nwyfre did not start out as meaning vital life force. It literally just meant sky or atmosphere. And then someone came along and changed the definition. And there's nothing wrong with that. Things change over time, concepts change and adapt over time. But if you think that Nwyfre is some energetic force that the ancient Druids believed in and pulled upon, then it gets a bit murky because that's not quite true, probably, as far as we know. So no, I don't find it problematic to equate Nwyfre as being this life force, this energetic current that we can all tap into. I don't personally gel with it, I don't personally see it, I don't understand why we would need to do that, and I'll get into that later, but I don't find it problematic or offensive or culturally appropriative. What I do find quite problematic, however, is the equating of Nwyfre to Eastern concepts. And this is because, from my experience, when we co-opt, compare and incorporate spiritual and religious beliefs or concepts from Eastern beliefs into modern-day paganism, it's often done clumsily and without much respect for the culture that it originates from. Take karma, for example, and I might get my head bit off for saying this. Karma is a complex and often misunderstood spiritual principle that is often bastardized and watered down by Western spiritualists and neo-pagans to simply mean what goes around comes around. But there is so much more to karma than karma being this cosmic super nanny keeping a tally of whether or not you've done good or bad and whether or not you deserve a spanking or a praising for it. It's a very watered down version, it's a very clumsily defined version, and now it's become the cultural consciousness that that is what karma is. It's this cosmic super nanny that's keeping a score of how good you are. That's what I mean when I say when we co-opt and incorporate these beliefs into our traditions as people outside of the cultures where these concepts come from. We often do it clumsily and in kind of derogatory ways without even realizing it. Because of this, I'm always cautious and tentative approaching a subject when it's compared and put in the context of being a Western equivalent to an Eastern principle. And so I would never personally describe Nwyfre as the Welsh chi, but I would say that it's the modern Druidic concept of a connecting life force in some Druidic traditions based on the workings of Iolo Morgannwg. Okay, so Nwyfre. maybe not appropriately understood today, historically speaking. Maybe it doesn't really have any ancient roots as being some kind of energetic force that we can tap into. But do we have something like that within the Welsh cultural context? Do we have a word that describes this life force that we can connect to? Personally, as a Welsh speaker, when I read definitions of Nwyfre, I'm often shocked to see that this word is being used to describe a force that lines up rather well with the concept of awen. Now, awen, I've done a whole video on it before. I might redo that video because I'm not 100% happy with it anymore, but it's there if you want to watch that one. But awen is a creative energy that awakens divine inspiration. Awen is a force that was utilised by the ancient bards of Wales, a force or energetic current that pulses from the other world of Anwfn into our own world. It was a force that could awaken the creative poet or artist within you. Even in modern Welsh, in the context of modern Welsh, awen is still used to describe inspiration or divine inspiration today. The translation of awen is often inspiration or muse, so it's still relevant today in that context. It is a force that we sing, a force that is pulled from the very depths of our realm and the other world and from the deep within ourselves. Awen is the force that aided the birth of Taliesin, one of the greatest prophets and bards in Welsh lore. It was the force that Ceridwen brewed in her magical cauldron. So when I hear people talk about Nwyfre and they talk about it as this creative force that awakens their inner prophet, their inner bard, their inner druid or magician, I just think, is that not awen? Can we not just use the word awen to describe that? Do we really need to use the word Nwyfre? But the issue then comes from people who define Nwyfre as being something quite different to awen. Some people describe awen as being the force that awakens our creative ability, whereas Nwyfre is the force that improves our physical vitality and our connection to the land, which is a little different in their view. So if we're to look at awen as the initiator of our creative energetic flow, is there then a word to describe perhaps a different kind of energy? An energy that flows through us and offers us health and vitality. An energy that offers us a connection to the land, to our ancestors, and our own personal power. And the truth of the matter is we actually have a lot of words in the Welsh language to describe that kind of energetic current. To give a few examples, nerth. So nerth in Welsh means power or strength, and it is used mostly today to describe physical strength or might. However, it can also mean spiritual, mental and moral strength and power as well. So nerth is something that we draw within ourselves. We have our own internal nerth, our own intrinsic power. Nerthis is the adjective form of nerth, I think. I'm not very scholarly, I don't know if adjective is the right word to use there, but we would describe something, if we were describing something as being powerful, we would say that it's nerthis in the Welsh language. And so if you're creating a very powerful, magical working, you might say that you are creating a swyn nerthis, powerful spell, or perhaps you're talking about the powerful, energetic current of the land, and you'd say pwer nerthis y tir, the powerful, the mighty power of the land. So I quite like the word nerth and nerthis to describe our inner power, our inner strength. And what's interesting is, the Roman historian Tacitus, I don't speak Latin, Tacitus, also references a Germanic goddess named Nerthis. And in Tacitus's writings, Nerthis is described as an earthly goddess. So could the word Nerthis derive from the name of this Germanic goddess at all? This isn't a theory that I've looked into much, it's just something that I stumbled upon while looking into this video, while researching for this video, and I thought it was very interesting to present that to you, this idea that perhaps the word nerth in itself comes from this earthly goddess, which in turn would make it even more suitable to be described as a word that we can associate with the strength within us and with a connecting force that connects us to the land. But maybe that's just me stretching it a little bit too far. Another Welsh word that you might come across is ynni, and ynni is a Welsh word that literally means energy, power, or even life force. This is a much more appropriate word, in my opinion, than Nwyfre. Ynni is literally the force of life, and that is how it's still defined in the dictionary today. Personally, as a Welsh speaker, if I were to describe a life force that awakens my connection to my personal power, to the land, to my ancestors, and all that I am connected to, I would say nerth, or ynni, not Nwyfre. And if I were to describe a force that awakens my creative and inspired potential, then I would use awen. Because to me, as a Welsh speaker, these words just mean a lot more to me than the word Luivre. And once again, I'm going to reiterate that if you are really, really in love and infatuated with the term Nwyfre, and you just love it and it makes sense to you in your personal practice, I'm not going to stop you. This video wasn't me trying to poo-poo people's beliefs and tell you, yo, you're wrong, I'm the mighty Welsh pagan and I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. That's not the case. And like I said, I've come across numerous Welsh speakers, Welsh pagans, who do use Nwyfre to mean this connecting life force. So you wouldn't be alone in doing so. But this video was literally just to give you a little historical context and a little linguistic context of what exactly the word Nwyfre means and where it comes from. And I hope it was enjoyable to you, and I hope I didn't ruffle any feathers in doing so. I'm also very open to being told that I'm wrong, so if I've said anything incorrectly in this video, if your research has proven different to mine, and you've come across an ancient source that says that Nwyfre is this ancient connecting life force that the Druids utilised, I would love to hear it, and I would love to discuss it, so do let me know in the comments below. But that's it for today. We have explored the concept of Nwyfre. What did you think of this video? Let me know in the comments down below. I love to hear your feedback on the content that I'm creating. This video took a long time to make, so I hope that it was enjoyable. Don't forget that my book... Where is it? I completely forgot that I don't need to put a picture on the screen anymore, I can actually just show you. So my book, Welsh Witchcraft, A Guide to the Spirits, Lore and Magic of Wales, is now available to purchase. The release date in America was literally today, the day I'm filming this. So it should be available to purchase now in America, and if you're in the UK or anywhere else internationally, then it should be coming out in the next few weeks. So this book is a guide to my personal practice as a Welsh witch and also to the historical lore and magic of Wales. It's an exploration of the magical culture of Wales. So if that's something that interests you, do look it up. I will put some links down in the description below where you can find the book for sale. I'd like to give another thank you to my patrons for making videos like this one possible. My patrons get access to an exclusive Facebook group, to an exclusive Discord server, they get access to exclusive content every single month, and they also receive access to all this content that I put up on YouTube and in other places earlier than anyone else. So they've already watched this video a week ago. So if you'd like to become a Patreon and support my work and help me put out more content like this, then click the link below to join my Patreon for as little as £1 or $1 a month. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bendithion suino, magical blessings upon you all. Thank you. Bye!